Mom's young fiancé demanded I call him Dad, despite the fact that I'm 35. When I refused, he started crying about his duty of fatherhood and ran off to his parents' house. Seriously? I'm a 35-year-old man, not some confused teenager. For some backstory, my dad died when I was 19, leaving my mom, me, and my two younger siblings. I'm the oldest, and it was tough for all of us. It took time, but eventually, my mom started dating again. We don't live together anymore, but our houses are right next to each other. There's a gate between them, so it's pretty common for her to offer to do my laundry, or for me to swing by for dinner or to look after the dog. That sort of thing. Plus, my siblings and I usually have dinner over there every other Friday or so. Now, a bit after she started dating, the guys she's been seeing have gotten younger and younger. Honestly, I've never had a problem with it. She's always been upfront with us about wanting to remarry, and we've supported her, at least after the initial shock. The latest guy, let's call him Phil, has been around since last June. He proposed at the start of autumn, and they're planning to marry next summer. We're all fine with it because, honestly, he's a good guy, and they clearly love each other. He treats her well, and that's what matters. So here's where it gets weird. This weekend, Phil calls me and asks if I can come over. I'm thinking, sure, no problem, maybe he needs help with some DIY stuff. I get there, and he greets me by calling me Sport again, like he always does. He loves giving us these weird nicknames, things like Kid, Scout, Little Buddy, or my personal favorite, Red and Blue, for no reason, mind you. My little brother's 30, and he's heard all these names too. He tried calling my sister, who's 28, Princess, once, but she just stared at him and he dropped it immediately. Phil's a lot like Charlie Day's character in Horrible Bosses. His whole life goal seems to be finding a girl, getting married, and having a family. When he told me and my brother this, my brother joked about how maybe our mom would come up short on the family part of the plan, and Phil lost it. He was really upset, but they made up after. Anyway, so I go over, and when I ask if my mom's around, Phil says no, it's just him. And then he says, we really need to talk man to man. So I'm thinking, okay, sure. And then he starts going on about how. So Phil starts going on about how he's always wanted to be a father and raise a son of his own, and then, boom, he drops this bombshell. He says, now I know I can never replace your father, the man who made you, but it would mean the world to me if you could call me Dad. I'll admit it, I sniggered a little. But then I saw the look in his eyes, and I knew he was serious. He looked like he was about to cry. And the thing is, he didn't back down. He kept pushing. I asked if he really meant it, and then he got super emotional, talking about what it means to be a man. He went on about how his whole purpose in life is to have and provide for a family, and how he wants me and my siblings to be part of that family. He kept saying how he'll never replace my dad. Fine, I get it, but here's the thing. He said he's ready to step up and be our dad, his words. He said he wants to provide and protect us, and I'm just sitting there, staring at him, thinking, dude, I'm a decade older than you, I live in a separate house, and I'm not looking for someone to provide for me. And honestly, even if I did need someone to provide for me, I don't think a guy who's a third of my age, works part-time at a hardware store, and collects manga is the guy for the job. No offense to manga lovers, but seriously, I was just shocked. So I ended up saying, okay, but I'm not sure why. Maybe just to get him to stop crying. But then he gets all emotional again, this time, in a happy way, and starts talking about how he wants to go camping or to a baseball game. I don't even like baseball, lol, but apparently I'm supposed to be his. Boy, this whole thing just felt so surreal. I'm literally a Shriner, so all this talk about service and charity just comes off as not the brag he thinks it is, because, let's face it, I'm 10 years older than this guy. Finally, I just said, this has gotten a bit too weird. I'm going home. He got really upset and I left. I called my brother to vent, and he totally agreed it was weird as expletive. Later, my mom called. She wasn't disappointed, but she admitted that Phil was really upset and depressed about the whole thing. I told her, Look, if he's embarrassed, he doesn't need to be. I get that he's excited about the marriage, and we can just laugh this off as a funny story. But then she hit me with this. She said it wasn't about embarrassment. He was upset because he poured his heart out, and I rejected him. She said, "Yeah, it is a bit kooky, but this is how he's proving to himself that he's a man." And I lost it. I snapped and said something like, "First off, it's not my job to certify what's between his legs. And second, this doesn't prove he's a man, it just proves he's a nut job." I realized how harsh that sounded, so I apologized immediately. But she wasn't done. She said she didn't want to hear it, so she hung up. 10 minutes later, she called back, and we both apologized. She begged me to just go along with it, at least until Phil has some kids of his own to call his. I won't go into the full details, but she kind of let slip that they're planning to try IVF because she's not ready to give up on being a mom just yet. And while I have my own thoughts about whether or not that's a good idea, well, that's a whole other discussion I'm not getting into here. We ended the conversation on a better note, with me reiterating that I would support her no matter what. She acknowledged that this situation is definitely stressful for me, but begged me to at least think about it. So I did. I thought it over, and of course, my answer is still no. I had a dad, and he died. Rest in peace, Dad. You're the only dad I've ever needed or wanted. And that's the only dad I'll ever give that title to. I'm not asking whether I'm being unreasonable or what I should do. What I'm asking is, what should I say? Because this clearly means something to Phil, and for some reason, it matters a lot to him. I love my mom deeply, so I want to handle this in the best way possible, especially since we're still all so involved in each other's lives, and they live just behind me. How can I make it as painless as possible for both of them that I think this whole thing is weird and borderline offensive? I don't want to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm genuinely scared of what it might do to the family. Edit. I showed my brother the post, and he laughed so hard he actually started coughing. Then he said we should call Phil Dr. Phil, and swap the nicknames he gave us. So, he'd be Blue, and I'd be Red. So, I told both my siblings, and we agreed we'd collectively put our foot down with Phil at our next family dinner. This was especially after the incident where Phil referred to my brother as Sport, and asked if he wanted to go see a baseball game with him. Honestly, I was kind of spurred on by what you all said, so I got involved and pinged him back with a note saying, "Tickets for me, Daddy." My brother then responded with, "Daddy wants me all to himself." Hot. It took Phil a few minutes to respond, but when he did, he was shocked. He said he was speechless and disgusted, and then messaged me privately to say he was utterly appalled, and that he'd never disrespect his own father like that. Phil lost it after that. He sent me this message saying, "I would never disrespect my father the way you boys did." At that point, I kind of snapped and said, "Right, that's because you're not my father, Phil. You're a 24-year-old man-child dating my mom, and you have no right to my respect, especially not the kind of respect a father gets." I immediately regretted it, apologized, but then I blocked his number and left the group chat. Apparently, he sent a similar message to my brother, who responded with more "Daddy" jokes, and Phil blocked him too. Well, that's pretty much where it ended. As for that family dinner we were supposed to have, I don't think it's going to happen. After the original post blew up, it seems someone from Phil's Lions Club saw it and reported it to their chair or whatever. Now, Phil's either been expelled or has resigned from the club. He's taken down nearly all mentions of the Lions from his social media and stopped identifying as a member altogether. His last post was some cryptic goodbye message where he went on about what it means to be a man in modern times and the duty of fatherhood bestowed on all men at birth. Honestly? Really weird stuff. My mom called me afterward, half in a panic, half in a rage. She was furious about the things I'd shared and broke down, saying we needed to meet. So we did. I asked my brother to come too. From what I understand, Phil's temporarily moved back in with his parents in the next town over, but my mom still wants to go ahead with the wedding. I think that's more because they've already spent a ton of money on it. When she said she was determined to have more kids, plural, My brother actually stepped up and asked her if she really thought it was a good idea, especially given her age. I pointed out that, assuming she had a baby next year and lived to 80, that child wouldn't even be done with college by the time she passed away. She just kind of stammered, saying, "People live longer these days," but then broke down crying. She admitted that she's not ready to give up on being a mom, and it all stems from some deep-seated trauma and her fears about the family falling apart. I won't go into that, out of respect for her. After we reassured her that we weren't going anywhere, she calmed down, and we had a really honest conversation. She's agreed to drop the IVF idea, primarily because it's just too expensive and unlikely to be approved, but she's still convinced it's scientifically possible. From an ethical standpoint, she feels she should have the right to pursue it. So, she's agreed to look into fostering instead. My brother and I both highly doubt anything will come of it, but at least she's considering a different route. So, we don't really think much will come of the IVF plan anymore. We're not too worried about that. The good news, though, is that my mom has agreed to look into therapy and psychiatric help to deal with her trauma. We helped get her in touch with a really kind lady in town who's going to help her unpack all this in a healthier way. At least someone's finally getting the help they need. As for Phil, I honestly have no idea what's going on with him, or what's going to happen. I did make it very clear to my mom, though, he's not my dad, not even my stepdad. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm certainly not going to call him either of those things. Outside of some legal paperwork, that's never going to change. She relented pretty quickly after that. I think she's finally starting to break out of her shell. We've agreed that if the wedding still happens, that's going to be a huge red line for me. I'm honestly not sure if Phil will even want to be friends with me after all of this. LOL, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, thanks for all the help on the original post, everyone. Edit, quick update. I can't respond to everyone, but I think the marriage is off now. Phil has gone AWOL again, and there was a huge argument with his family. They're demanding he call off the wedding and date people his own age. This apparently made him snap. My mom and I have met his mom and older brother. They said Phil is very insecure around girls his own age and has never been able to talk to them properly, which is why he has a preference for older women. This really upset my mom. After some begging from all of us, she's agreed to push the wedding back, though she still wants to keep dating him. As for Phil, no one really knows where he is. His brother assumes he's couch surfing with his friends. Those friends have been sending my brother and me some not nice messages, implying we're just jealous of the MILF hunter. If any of you socially inept, expletive, are reading this, I don't need to chase after middle-aged women because I can talk to men my own age like a normal person. Peace. Girlfriend told everyone she was excited about our planned baby. But then I found toxic herbs in our drawer and learned she caused a miscarriage for social media attention. So here's the situation. I'm 28M, and I've been dating my girlfriend, 26F, for 4 years. She's always told me she wanted kids, though we never really actively tried. It was more her idea, and I never pressured her into having a baby. I make enough money, we own a home, and so having a baby was something we could afford to do. To clarify, I'm not mad at her for wanting a baby. I'm extremely concerned, and honestly, I feel like everything she said about wanting a baby might have been a lie. Abortion is also legal up to 21 weeks in our state, so I feel really confused and conflicted about everything. Here's what happened. I'm 28, and I've been with my girlfriend, 26, for about 4 years. She told me she wanted kids, but we didn't actively try for one until recently. She said she was pregnant and had symptoms, took a test, and was happy about it. I was happy too, so I offered to make an appointment for her. We went together, and the doctor confirmed she was 6 weeks pregnant. We were both excited, and she even told her friends and family. Then, at around 9 weeks, she had a sudden miscarriage. She was upset, and I tried to comfort her as best I could. It seemed like it hit her hard, and I just wanted to support her. However, a few days later, I was retrieving something from a drawer in our bedroom, and I found some herbs tucked under a bag, pennyroyal and mugwort. I was confused, because I've heard that pennyroyal is sometimes used to cause self-induced abortions, so I asked her about it, and she immediately became defensive, saying she didn't know where it came from. I kept asking, and eventually, she broke down and admitted that she had used the herbs to cause the miscarriage. I was in total shock. She was crying, and I just couldn't understand why she would do something like that. I asked her why she hadn't just told me the truth. I told her she didn't need to lie to me about it, but she never gave me a clear answer. I told her we needed to go to the hospital immediately to make sure she wasn't hurt, since pennyroyal is toxic, but she kept refusing. It's been a few days now, and she seems fine physically, but emotionally, she's been avoiding the conversation. She still insists she doesn't want to talk about it. I found out she had been telling her friends and family that she miscarried naturally and had been accepting condolences. The whole thing just feels like it's spiraling into something really unhealthy, and I'm starting to think she might be dealing with a breakdown of some kind, but I don't know what to do about it. Eventually, I told her that if she ever wants to try for a baby again, I can't trust her about it anymore. I just can't. She was upset when I said that, but what else could I say in this situation? It's hard for me not to think that maybe she did this for attention, to get sympathy from her friends and family. I don't want to feel like a horrible person, but that thought has been haunting me. I don't know if I'm just overreacting or if there's something deeper going on, but I feel so conflicted. Edit. I just want to thank everyone for the information about the herbs and all the advice. I'm not going to be able to comment for a few hours because I won't be on Reddit for a while, but I'm planning to talk to her tonight or tomorrow, whenever I can. So, things have calmed down a bit, and I wanted to give an update. First off, for some context, we live just 5 minutes away from a Planned Parenthood clinic that specializes in abortions. I get why people thought she didn't want to go there because of protesters, and I totally understand that. However, I drive by that clinic every single day on my way to work, and I've never seen any protesters. It's usually pretty empty, except for a few cars parked on the side of the road. That said, I still get why she might not have felt comfortable going for a medical abortion. After reading through all the comments on my last post, I decided to ask her directly, why did she do this? What was her goal? She really didn't want to talk about it and tried to avoid the conversation. Eventually, I told her, if we can't have a real conversation about this, then I have to end the relationship. She came back in and said that the reason she did it was because she never felt like her family gave her enough attention growing up. She felt unsupported by them, and she thought if she told them she had a miscarriage, they would feel bad for her and finally give her the attention she wanted. I was in complete shock. I couldn't understand why she wouldn't just get a medical abortion and lie about it if she wanted sympathy so badly, instead of physically harming herself with toxic herbs. So I asked her about that. She said she wanted the experience of having a real miscarriage, not just the medical one. I was so confused by this and honestly didn't know how to process it. I just sat there in shock and didn't say much else. She kept telling me she didn't want me mad at her, that she didn't want to break up, and was literally begging me not to leave her. I asked her if there was any chance the baby might not have been mine, and she said no. I told her she needs to get therapy, immediately. Thankfully, I make enough to cover therapy costs, so I told her I would pay for it if she'd just please go. She agreed. I also insisted that she needed to go to the hospital and get checked out, especially after reading so many comments about the risk of sepsis, liver and kidney damage, etc. I think the thought of that scared her enough to finally agree. We went to the hospital last night, and thankfully she's okay. They told us she had been drinking about a cup of the pennyroyal tea every day for a few days. She'd also been taking high doses of vitamin C, turmeric, and parsley. That's where we're at for now. I'm relieved that she's okay, but I'm still in a bit of shock over all of this. I love her, and I do want to be with her, but all of this came out of nowhere. I'm not sure what the next step is, but I do know that therapy is a must. Thank you to everyone who commented on the original post. Your advice really helped push me in the right direction. A lot has happened since my last post, and everything is a bit calmer now, but I'm hoping this will be my final update. Apologies in advance because this will be a long one. In my last post, I told her that she needed to go to therapy, that I would pay for it, and that I was just desperately hoping she'd agree. I really wanted her to go, hoping for some sign that she'd take her mental health seriously. But she told me she doesn't think she needs therapy and insisted she would never do what she did again. I was shocked and frustrated, but she was adamant that therapy wasn't necessary. We went back and forth on this for days, but she kept repeating the same things. She told me if I really loved her, I should just stay with her, regardless of what happened. It wasn't that big of a deal in her mind. Honestly, I was furious when I heard that because not only did she purposely miscarry the baby we had planned for, but she also harmed herself just to experience what it's like to have a miscarriage. And now, she doesn't even think she needs help? How am I supposed to trust her again after all of this? At this point, I was seriously thinking about telling her parents. I was so worried about her mental health that I almost went through with it, but during an argument, I accidentally mentioned it, and she broke down, literally begged me on the ground not to tell them. She pleaded with me, crying, saying it would make everything worse. Part of me wanted to tell them anyway, but I didn't. I took her word for it, mostly because I was terrified of her losing it even further. I didn't want to push her over the edge. But the truth is, I can't stay in this relationship anymore. I finally told her that I have to leave. I told her that it's no longer my responsibility to help her through this. She was devastated, of course, but honestly, I think I've hit my breaking point. I can't keep trying to save someone who refuses to get help, especially when I've made it clear what needs to be done, and she just refuses. My trust is shattered, and I can't move forward knowing she's unwilling to acknowledge how serious this situation is. So yeah, I'm done. I just don't know what the next steps are. I'm worried about her, but at this point, there's nothing more I can do. Thanks again to everyone who gave advice on the last post. I really needed the clarity, and I think I finally have it. Key takeaways and thoughts. It's been a tough decision, but I know now that I need to put myself first. I don't think I can move forward in any healthy way if she's not willing to seek the help she needs. I'm sad it's come to this, but I have to be realistic about the situation. This has honestly been making me lose my mind too. I was holding it back, but I can't take it anymore. Yesterday, before this fight, she publicly posted on Facebook about having a miscarriage. She seemed so torn up, accepting condolences in the comments again. When I brought it up to her, she told me the same thing as before. She was pretty much just trying to feel important to friends and family. What shocked me most was how nonchalant she was about it, like she thought I wouldn't care. I told her to stop posting about it and to stop telling people. During our fight, I told her seriously, "I can't be with you anymore," I said. "You can stay here for now or go back to your parents." At that point, she was lying on the ground crying. I had my phone ready because my gut was screaming that she might try to hurt herself. She kept coming out of the room she was packing in, walking over to hug me out of nowhere. Then she said, "If you're breaking up with me, I just want one final hug." The wildest part? She came out of the room wearing one of my shirts, a shirt she wasn't wearing before. She took it off right there, handed it to me, and said, "Here's your shirt back." I didn't know what she was trying to do. She finally left and went to her parents' house. Right before she left, she was crying harder, and I think it hit her. I was serious this time. Then, the messages and calls started. They ranged from her saying she wants to fix things, begging for therapy now, to promises that she'd never do this again. I ignored them all. I realized this isn't my responsibility anymore. Her parents can take care of it, just as I'd worried about before. Apparently, she did try to harm herself. Her mom messaged me, saying she's in the hospital now. I'm assuming they've placed her on a hold because she tried to kill herself. She's physically fine, thankfully. This is it for me, my last update. I'm not going back to her. I'm done. I need to stop thinking about all of this and just move on, maybe get a better lock for my door. Post Edit 1, I told her parents everything. If anything else happens, I'll update this post. Edit 2, I ended up sharing the messages between me and her with her parents. I even took photos of the herbs she used and told them everything I knew. Thankfully, they didn't accuse me of anything or react drastically. They actually thanked me for telling them. They said they'd let the hospital know everything I shared. I'm not sure what's happening now, but she's still being held. If anything else happens, I'll update this post.